Representative Rich McCormack, who's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and he's joining us now from Georgia. Congressman, good to have you with us tonight. Thank you so much for your time. You're a veteran. You're also a doctor. You were a helicopter pilot too for the Marines. You understand operating in a war environment, I think, better than most of us at this moment, and the consequences, the human and life civilian consequences of military objectives. What do you make of what we've seen in the past few hours with this attack on this refugee camp? Does it make the conversation about more money to Israel, the difficult conversation about supporting Israel and their objectives, that much harder in light of what we're seeing?
Before any of this really went down, as soon as we knew that the Gaza Strip had become erupted into Israel, and I knew that Israel was going to retaliate, I said right off the bat, there's going to be horrible ramifications from a ground war in Gaza. We knew this was going to happen. This is part of war. If you don't think that even the greatest successes we've had in war historically, you can even point at World War II, which we glorify all the time. There was a human tragedy of unparalleled proportions during that war where millions and millions, tens of millions of innocent people were killed. We had over 200 people executed by the United States. Who were United States soldiers who did war crimes. War is a horrible thing, or else we'd become too fond of it. That's not my original saying, but it's so true. Horrible things happen during war, and the reason war happened is because one people attack another people. Sometimes it's justified, sometimes it's not. In this case, I don't know why Hamas decided to go into Israel. They certainly weren't occupied by Israel at the time. They came in, they beheaded babies, they raped women, they kidnapped people. That's what started this. The fact of the matter is, if everyone in the Gaza Strip laid down their arms right now, we'd have peace. If everybody in Israel laid down their arms, we would have no more Israel. As a matter of fact, that people would be annihilated. That's the fact of the matter. War is a horrible thing. There's going to be continued innocents that are going to die on both sides. I hate it with all my heart, but Hamas has to be rooted out. They are the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a critic of what you've just said would say that there hasn't been peace for many years, and it's not as simple as what took place in the last 2 weeks. The unspeakable events of October the 7th required a response, and that's the message from the United States. The question is, and I think the United States has warned about this both publicly and privately, that mistakes by the United States and other nations have been made in the past. Is there a line that shouldn't be crossed? And are we approaching that line? That at some point the cost of those military objectives is too high and perhaps another strategy needs to be employed?
People who think you're going to have a clean war don't understand war. There's no such thing. I've never heard of a war. It doesn't matter if it's Iraq, Afghanistan, Korea, Vietnam, World War I, World War II, you name it. I've never seen a war where you went in and strategically were able to extract exactly what you wanted without civilian casualty. That's impossible.
It is an justifiable war, I guess is the question. Is this still a justifiable war?
We've written books on this. There's no such thing as a justifiable war because war is a horrible thing. Now, when you're talking about when people attack the United States, if somebody took your family and killed your family, I think you'd have a different perspective on it than if it's just some arbitrary person who dies. These people are literally fighting for their survival. Israel is surrounded. They are the only democracy in that region. They understand their survival is literally at stake right now. They have a two-front war, whether they want to admit it or not. They're being attacked from Lebanon, from Yemen, from West Bank, from Gaza, all simultaneously. There's missiles coming from everywhere. This is a matter of rooting out the people who would do them harm, not just harm, but eliminate their very existence. This is a fight for survival. And anybody who's been to Afghanistan, who's seen people who switch their allegiance rapidly, and you wonder why. It's because they're just trying to make it to the next generation. That is as rudimentary to being a human as anything that exists in human nature.
And the problem is I could substitute the Palestinians in, and I don't substitute Hamas in, but I could substitute the word Palestinians in for what you just said for the Israelis here. But I do want to get your point about what we're seeing in terms of Congress, in terms of trying to get a package, at least as far as the Senate Republicans are concerned, and the White House, of course, too, a dual package that provides aid to both Israel and the Ukrainians. The challenge, of course, is the new leadership of the House, who seems determined simply to provide aid to Israel. Can I ask where you stand, and what do you think is possible, ultimately, from Congress? Will Ukraine be separated
first of all,
and
just
left
to clear,
out of... please.
Sure. To clarify a couple points. First of all, you're right on Palestinians.
Yeah.
They've been used and abused by the Hamas regime, which only a small percentage of the population, whether it be in Afghanistan or in Gaza, is really responsible for that violence and for all the death that happens downrange. So I agree with you 100% on that point. When it comes to the aid package, I don't think that the speaker is only going to do the Ukraine package, but he wants to do it individually and separately, because otherwise it gets confounded. It gets more difficult to deal with different factions. I think we have near universal support for Israel. We want to have good accountability for where that money goes, to be consistent with our philosophical boundaries of where we spend our money and where and how it helps. I think that's why the way that we're paying for this is kind of unprecedented. I went to talk about an emergency funding item and then to look for pay-go. I don't think that's consistent with historical emergency fundings, and I think it's something to be careful of. And it's also something, this IRS money has been cut in several different bills, and so it's inconsistent with the fact that you're either going to cut it in one place or another, but you can't cut it in 3 different places and call it the same savings. So I just want to have an honest, transparent conversation about this. I don't think that Ukraine's going to be ignored. I don't think the southern border is going to be ignored. I think we have to take a stand on each one individually, which is, I think, a better way to pass things. But I know that the Senate has their own ideas, and so does the president. But this is something we're going to have to come to grips with this week.
We'll see what happens. Sir, I've run out of time. Good to chat to you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Representative Rich McCormack there. Sir, thank you.